Yo, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Underexposed. My name is Phil. I am your host, and as you can see, today is a solo episode. I cannot tell you guys how many takes this is this has taken, but yeah, we're here. Well, I'm here. I told myself I would get over some of my fears, and I thought, what better place to do that than on the podcast. I figured since I'm conquering one of my biggest fears, I feel like I'm being vulnerable and transparent with myself and, well, with you guys now. My biggest fear is to talk by myself, being alone. And I know I'm not. I have God. I have my wife. I'm surrounded by community. I'm surrounded by friends that are all there for me. So why am I so afraid to talk to myself? And that's what I'm trying to unwrap here today. So don't mind me if I start to ramble. Don't mind me if I start to get all jittery or nervous, or I don't know. Just got a lot of stuff to unfold here. And since I ask all of my guests to be vulnerable and transparent with me, it's only fair that I ask myself to be vulnerable and transparent with you. And I will be having more guests. Don't think that, I know I've been doing a lot of episodes with just me and my wife, but it's okay. I mean, she's not a podcaster. I don't expect her to be on every single episode. But this is definitely something I need to do. So here I am. This is weird. As you guys can see, I'm rambling. I'm talking to myself, and I'm mortified. I got sweat building up in my eyes. I got sweat in my armpits and other spots in my body, and it's scary. Growing up, I was always told that talking to yourself was weird. And so I always kind of just suppressed this part of me that I probably shouldn't have, now that I think about it. Now I have a wife and kids. I got a church community. I got friends. I got family. I got all kinds of people there to support me. I got people online when it comes to gaming that, for some reason, they're very supportive people. But I still don't know why I'm still afraid of talking to myself, or talking to a camera with just myself. So today I'm doing that. And I know I just keep repeating myself over and over again, but that's just what happens when you're not used to this. Because I was told it was weird, I always told myself it was weird. And it was just one of those things that, I don't know, I don't think I ever got over it. Obviously not. And well, since I'm going to be here talking to you guys, I'm technically not alone. So I guess I could look past it. I got other subjects on my phone too that I could look at once I start rambling a little too much. But yeah, I hope you guys like the video quality. I hope you guys like what I got going on right now. I got 2 cameras set up again, just because last time we had a little bit of a situation. And I'm not too sure if it's going to work out still with the newer camera, so giving it a shot. Hopefully everything works out, and we can start having some more podcasts with better quality. On the meantime, I did want to announce or ask of you guys, listeners, if you guys have anybody, or if you yourself feel like, hey, I want to be on the podcast, don't know what to talk about though, that's okay. Hit me up. Send me a DM, send me an email at underexposed.pod@gmail.com, or DM me at tellphil. I'll more than likely respond, and we'll set something up. We'll set up any time of day, any time of the night. Well, I don't know about all that. I gotta talk to my wife about that. But yeah, I'm openly looking for people to interview. I know you guys out there have been eager to meet some new people and get some more perspectives. And as much people as I know, you'd think, I'd have somebody here. But people's schedules are very different. People are busy, and I'm doing my best to try to fish someone out there. But yeah, my week has been pretty slow, actually. My week has been relatively chill, real calm. Been with the kids. It was their last week of school last week, so it's just been a lot of home life with the kids and trying to figure out a new routine, keep everybody busy, and not, jumping off the walls or fighting and stuff like that. But I did want to touch on a subject. One of the subjects I have written down over here is on mental health. I know we keep talking about this subject. I just feel like it's a very important thing to kind of break down, and now we're going to get my full take on it. I've been holding back a lot on, what goes on in my family, what goes on in my life. And there's a lot that I feel like just people don't talk about enough. I know that I have ADHD, I have OCD. I've been to the doctors plenty of times and not fully diagnosed, mainly because I don't follow up with appointments and all that. And I grew up in a very Mexican household where, mental disabilities and stuff like that weren't really a thing. People didn't understand what depression was. They're like, what is that? ¿Qué es eso? So I kind of carried a lot of that toxicity with me, where when it came to checking on my own health and how I'm doing or how I feel, it wasn't a thing. And so, I guess that's another reason why it's so hard to talk to myself or so hard to talk to a camera, because it's an assumption I'm making on myself based on what I was raised in. I'm assuming I'm crazy. If I talk to myself, I'm assuming I'm a little crazy if I'm talking to this black device in front of me. And in today's society, that's kind of just what it's become. Everybody and their mama is just walking around with an iPhone or Samsung, pointing the camera right at themselves and vlogging their everyday life. And I'm not that kind of person. So feeling like I'm called to do this has definitely been a challenge, because I don't want to do it. I'm not used to being in front of the camera. I'm not used to being on an open mic. I'm not used to recording my thoughts. And it's scary, because anything I say now, anything I say whenever in the future is going to be continually recorded. And I've made a kind of a little bit of a pact with myself and decided to just go with it. Whatever I say, it's just going to get posted. If I'm wrong, definitely comment. If you can prove me wrong, and go, I'll read it, and I'll try to make an educated assumption or educated decision on whether or not I believe you. And I'll look up your, whatever it is you send me, and I will make another video and eventually say I'm wrong. But until then, or when that starts happening, I'm just going to be spewing out my thoughts, and it's going to be weird for myself, but I'm going to do it anyways. So mental health, again, I grew up with ADHD and OCD. Recently learned that ADHD is something that a lot of people are coming out with having. And I never thought it was a mental disability until I realized that it's not that it's normal, just that a lot of people have ADHD, and it's a spectrum. It's not something it's not like a black light, like or on and off switch where you got it or you don't. We're all kind of, on some level of the spectrum on it. and some people a little bit more on the heavy side, including myself. That comes with memory loss. You could have just told me one thing. 2 minutes later, I forget. The other day, I had a situation where I walked out of my garage, left the garage door open, grabbed something from the car, left the car door open, walked inside because I was going to go back out, and then I started doing something else because I saw it there. And then I didn't even finish that. I ended up going to the bathroom, and then I realized the bathroom needed some cleaning, and I just started doing that. By the time I came out the bathroom, I forgot what I was doing. Came, sat down, started watching a movie with my wife, even took care of dinner and stuff. And at the end of the night, we went to bed, woke up the next morning. I'm like, oh, snap. I think I'm supposed to go do something real quick. I walk out the garage, the car door is still open, the garage door is still open. It's definitely a weird thing going on, but at the end of the day, get all my stuff done. But yeah, at the end of the day, I still get all my stuff done somehow, or sometimes I miss them, but that's just kind of what comes with the ADHD. It comes with territory. Sometimes it's not something that drastic. Sometimes it could just be leaving a bunch of cabinet doors open in the kitchen because I was looking for something, and then my wife will find me doing something else. It's one of those things. There's a lot of other things that come with ADHD and stuff like that. And I know I'm only talking about ADHD right now, but that's just kind of the subject I'm going on. But the OCD is a whole other end of the spectrum that is also kind of crazy. So with the OCD, that's kind of what makes me good at the things I do. It's kind of what makes me multi-talented. I obsessively compulse over things that I like. So, for example, when I went and bought this new camera, I went and did a ton of research. I must have watched like 20 to 40 hours of just YouTube videos and content about what I could do with this kind of camera, and got into some videography, cinematography, like things I would probably not really use as often. And let's be honest, most of the time the camera's just going to sit on a tripod, so it's not like I need to learn most of that stuff. But because I like it, I obsessively compulse over it, and I go and I do all the research I can. I learn all about it, and in return I get pretty good at it. So in the construction field or in the creative field, I've always been that kind of way, where if I enjoy it, if I enjoy the outcome, I learn enough about it to do it at a level where I can get paid and I wouldn't be cheating anybody, like, because I learned it well enough. So with the photography and videography, at one point, my brother and I, we had a business, and we did photography. I learned everything I could about the photography and got pretty good at it. We started getting really, really good at it. I don't know if you guys know that back in the day there was these photographers at the mall and Macy's that you'd go, you'd pay, they'd do some pictures, they'd frame them for you. You'd leave the mall having spent like $200-300 for some studio photography that honestly wasn't all that great. And they had like 2-3 little cheesy props you could use, and you'd go and you pay, you print them. Well, my brother and I figured, we could take it to them. We could go out and we could, take pictures out at a nice park or a nice city view, whatever kind of background or vibe they were looking for. And we got really good at it. Well, over time, we kind of started taking a lot of the business from the mall and stuff like that. And so that's one of those things that I obsessively compulsed over. My brother too, he's got some OCD too, even though he's probably not diagnosed, but That's something that I'm pretty sure we all got from my dad. Because we all have that trait where we find something we like and we try to learn everything we can about it. And that's just two of the things that we deal with in my home: ADHD and OCD. And for my wife, it's pretty challenging. I won't say that, I don't give her a hard time. Sometimes, she could be pulling her hairs because of the shenanigans I be doing, and it drives her crazy. And God bless her for being so patient. And for me, I deal with her too. I mean, she's got her BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. From what I've learned, it's an entire concoction of a bunch of stuff. And it's not something that is simple to explain. It's very complex in nature. It's also a spectrum, which makes it even more complicated. And with her, the difference, one of the major differences, is that there's a lot of triggers involved. And what is difficult is that even she doesn't know that there's a trigger there, which is fine, because we're married, so till death do us part, not till these triggers do us part. I try to help her find out why she got so upset, and she tries to help me find out why she got so upset, why something triggered her. A lot of the times it's the root of the issue will go way far back into her family and childhood stuff that, not that she had like a terrible childhood. She didn't have the best one. She definitely had some traumatic events, and because of that, there's a lot of subconscious suppressed memories or repressed memories, whatever you call it, and just the dumbest things can trigger them. We talked about it in one of our previous episodes where, like, we were on our way to SF one time when her and I were still dating, and I took her to SF, and I was like, let's go have some fun. The whole drive there, she was listening to one album, and I'm a musician. I like music, but even I get tired of listening to the same person. So I remember asking her, like, hey babe, you change it to someone else? And for some reason that triggered her, and it caused a whole fight. I'm being real transparent. We fixed our issues, obviously. But yeah, at the time I was like, this girl's tripping. What's going on? Like, what the heck? Like, I just made one little comment. I just made a little request. It shouldn't be that hard. I didn't understand my wife. And at the time it was one of those things that, like, it bugged me. I paid all this money. Like, it was thinking of me. And I didn't really look into the fact that, she's got some issues, and I got to help her get through them, because if not, no one else will. And I can approach it with love and kindness or patience, and maybe I can get through to her and we can make some sort of, improvement. Or I can get mad and fight back and fix nothing and ruin this relationship. Thank God I chose to stick with it and be patient and put my pride away and put my anger and frustrations away. Because now I even enjoy listening to the same music she listens to. Like, I even canceled some of my music subscriptions because I'm like, nah, I'll just listen to what my wife listens to. It's okay. On the rare occasion that I'm not near my wife, I just go to YouTube. It's not a big deal. And so that's something that she carries, and we're definitely working on. Same thing with me and my issues. Then there's the kids, which is a whole different ballgame because they're still developing. They're still growing. They're still learning. There's a whole lot of patience on a different level with them, because not only is it that we have to deal with the mental disabilities like ADHD on Athena or autism on Josiah, but they're also still forming their purest selves. Like they're forming their adult selves now. And so dealing with their mental illnesses, we have to deal with them in a way that we know kind of caters to their disability or mental disorder, but also in a way that it's not necessarily going to make them get comfortable with being catered to. Because, for example, one of the things that I definitely wanted to tie into was parenting Josiah. And although he is autistic, although he does have triggers, he is on a spectrum as well, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to treat him any differently. He knows when he's being bad. He knows when he's throwing tantrums or throwing a fit for nothing. He knows when he's trying to take advantage of mom or dad after mom or dad said no. And so we still have to discipline him at the exact same consistency that we do with our other kids, but the discipline is very different with him. A lot of the times a flick to the head will just snap him out of whatever tantrum he's doing. We can't give him long sentences. We have to talk to him kind of like caveman style for now, just because his verbal communication it's a work in progress, so keep things within like a 5-word to 10-word maximum, 5-word minimum to 10-word maximum of an explanation as to why he's in trouble. But he does know what he's up to. He does know what he's doing. And a lot of the times it's honestly just a matter of him just listening. So we do get a lot of dirty looks sometimes when we're out in public and people, I get it, they don't know what's going on. And I don't expect them to, they can make their assumptions. They can judge whatever they want. It doesn't bug me. It bugs my wife a little bit, but not me. But for me, it's one of those things that I get that he's going through it. Sometimes, like, I'm able to tell now when it's an actual trigger that's being activated, because just the way he cries is different than the way he cries when he's just throwing a tantrum, or when he's just being a brat, or when he's not getting his way. For me, it's not that big of a deal. Like, we've had some instances where we're at like Olive Garden or Applebee's, and he's triggered by like a video or something that's on the TVs, and we're not going to tell the manager, can you change the TV, because it's inconveniencing everybody. But I also don't want him to sit there and cry and have this episode in the middle of the restaurant and all these other people are trying to enjoy themselves. So my wife and I have decided to like just get up and take him for a walk, change his environment for a second. He calms down. We bring him back in. He's good. We get dirty looks then. But I always tell my wife, it's don't worry about it. It's people don't understand unless they're part of our home. They're not gonna. So that's something that we do to try to deal with with the autism. With Athena, it's a little bit differently. It's a lot of constant like, hey, Athena, don't get distracted. It's a lot of like talking and remembering and prompting, because she will forget 2 seconds after you just told her. Like we'll be like, can you clean up the living room, please? 2 seconds passes by. She sees a fun toy and she's already playing with it. So it's like, hey, don't forget. Oh, she snaps right back into it. And with Josiah, it's kind of the same thing, but it's a lot of repetition, a lot of consistency. The minute we stop parenting him like we normally do, it throws him off completely. So with him, we've had to kind of change our parenting tactics a little bit. With Athena and with our other kids, it's easier to just do our regular disciplinary actions and incentivized actions at home and stuff like that. And when we're out in public, we parent them a little differently. We're obviously in places where we can't raise our voice a certain way, or just not to disturb the general peace of the place, but we still definitely discipline and check our kids and stuff like that, and help them have a good time. But with Josiah, the way we parent at home has to be the way we parent everywhere else. We cannot be inconsistent. The minute we shy away or act a little differently out in public, it throws him off completely. Because for him, we're mom and dad always. And it's like that for the other kids too, but the other kids know, like, when we're out, it's a little bit more discretion. It's a little bit more like, oh, I'm gonna get a lecture when I get home. With Josiah, it's the minute it happens, we have to get on it. There isn't taking any breaks. There's no such thing as breaks with him, because if we take a break with him, it's bad. It's pretty bad. So we'll say it this way. One time, all it takes is one. But one time, we were, I believe it was like his third or his fourth birthday party, and we were at a park. We were celebrating. He had no idea. He just wanted the cake and all that. We look away for 2 seconds. We were inconsistent with the way we watch him, and we figured, there's other adults here. We're not the only ones keeping an eye on the kids. So we had my side of the family there. We had my wife's side of the family there. Tons of adults and few kids, not too many kids, and it wasn't anything crazy or anything like that. But Josiah decided, I'm going to take off. And he took off. There was another party, like, on the other end of the park. And we were all kind of chilling. We were just eating some food, eating cake and whatnot. No, actually, we were just about to cut the cake. And this is the reason he left, because he saw that the other party had fruit, and he loves fruit. And if we're inconsistent with how we watch him and how we take care of him, he was like, I'm out. He took off. He thought he had full permission. He didn't think he was doing anything wrong. And by the time any of us noticed, like, hey, where's the birthday boy? Because we got to sing happy birthday. And we all panicked. All of us, we scattered through the park. I remember my dad saw some dude on a bike with some kid on his bike. The worst thoughts came to him. He was like, hey, he was all making a scene. And then my brother-in-law was out walking at the other end of the park, and we were all just kind of like in a bit of a panic because our 4-year-old took off. Nobody noticed. So now, needless to say, that whenever we're at a park setting or whenever we're at a public setting, we can't be the slightest bit lenient with him, because he takes advantage of it. And all of the discipline we've ever taken on him for wanting to do something he shouldn't do flies out the window. And then he looks at us all confused, like, what did I do wrong? And you will not get to him, because the autism is just like that. So as far as parenting and touching on mental health and in our home, we definitely got our hands full. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. I know that we do have a lot of help too. Our church, thank God, like they've they've even like catered to some of his needs, Josiah's needs, as an autistic boy. Like, he doesn't hang out with people his age. He hangs out with the toddlers and stuff like that, because for him and his mindset, he doesn't quite fit in there, but he doesn't like to feel the roughness and the loudness of the kids that are his age. So it kind of works out as like a special needs program for him. And the people at church, they do a great job at like being patient with him and working with him, trying to make things fun and helpful. So our family also, like, now that everyone has been around him enough, we all kind of know, like, hey, keep an eye on Josiah. Don't let him, if I'm watching him and I'm going to stop watching him, I need to be sure that someone else is going to be watching him verbally. Like, I need to confirm, because, well, we don't want to, we don't want to live another instant where he just takes off and, you know, things can get pretty bad. So security in our home is definitely something that we're in constantly just keeping up with. Thank God he's not the kind of kid that wanders out of the house. He knows how to unlock the doors, and we have proper security and all that. We have a security system here, but he's not the kind of kid that likes to wander out the house, because we're consistent with him on where he can and cannot go. What time can he go to certain areas of the house? That's another thing that we try to schedule everything. So he's a very strict kid, and he doesn't need an alarm system. He doesn't need any of that. He just kind of gets up at the right time. He's ready to start his day. Well, I feel like I'm rambling a bit on this, but you guys kind of get it. So the next kind of topic I wanted to talk about was same thing along the lines of family. And obviously, now that I've touched on the subject of mental health, there's other things that kind of merit an explanation on mental health, as far as what I believe, because I don't think it all has to do with mental disabilities. I get that we all have like some sort of ADHD or OCD or BPD or autism, and ADHD is part of the autism spectrum, and so is OCD. But then there's anxiety, there's depression, there's stress, there's all kinds of stuff that kind of fall under the same category of mental health. And so we've talked about how we deal with certain depression or anxiety. For me, I talked about how anxiety is one of those things that is more of something I'm expecting to either do or finish or accomplish. But lately, I haven't really experienced any anxiety on that. It's been more of a stress. And, well, because it's recent, I feel like it's something I can elaborate a little bit more on. So for me, the stress has always been provision. How to handle, a wife and 3 kids and myself. How to juggle all of these bills, and it can become a lot. And without the help that most people have, because of all of our mental disabilities and our circumstances, it all falls on me as a man. And it's one of those things that I just feel like I definitely know my wife appreciates about me. And it's one of those things I feel like I don't have enough time to just sit around and just feel. And because of that, I end up taking a lot of the stress and turning it into frustration and taking it out on my family. And I'm not abusive. We don't got to go there. But it definitely shows in my lack of patience sometimes, and my lack of desire to understand. My temper can be a little short, and not in an explosive way, but more of like a impatient, or I tend to overvalue the time and not look at the perspective that I probably should. My perspective ends up changing from, counting my blessings to counting how many things I have to do, and then my blessings kind of get in the way. And so that's where it's like, it's one of those hard things to juggle, but definitely, it's definitely one of those things that I feel like I do kind of handle a little bit better now. A little bit better now that I'm home way more often. And so one of the things that I tend to do now is I try to look at the bigger picture. So for instance, since I'm home more often, of course my kids want my attention. Of course they scream and cry and yell for daddy, and I spoil them, and then I try to treat them nicely and try to take advantage of the time that I do have with them. So I don't get as frustrated no more whenever they're trying to get my attention and I'm worrying about something else. It's a lot easier now to continue to work on what I need to work on, which is like coming up with a way to make some money or stuff like that, but also try to enjoy the fact that my kids are here and they're trying to spend time with me. Because that's definitely something I didn't do enough growing up. And my dad was a great dad. He was the best dad we could ever have. And he was very flawed. He wasn't there for us as often as we would have liked him to be. He was a workaholic. He had a lot of selfish tendencies or thought processes. And he was also very short-tempered in a way. He was very patient, but when that fuse was out, he'd blow up. And he wouldn't, physically abuse any of us and take his day out on anybody, but he would definitely walk out. And so for us, him being there was a big deal. For me, at least, it was a big deal, like having my dad around. And because he was always trying to provide for us, his form of expression of love was to go to work. And that definitely wasn't our love language. And so we all wanted his attention. We all wanted his time. And he gave us his time through work. And so it just didn't translate very well. For him, he was giving us his all. All of his time was going ultimately for us because it was going to work. He was getting a check and then he would bring it home. And then in return, we'd have clothes on our back. We'd have food. We had a car ride to school. We didn't have to walk. Sometimes we did, but it was just for different circumstances. But he always did everything in his power to provide. And so with that example, coming into my relationship with my wife, I didn't realize how stressed my dad was because he never talked to us. He never shared with us, and he never helped us kind of, hey, this is kind of the things that you're going to be dealing with growing up. Maybe we should talk about it. Maybe you guys should figure this out or learn. Or we never got those perspectives from him. So it was always we made our assumptions, we made assumptions on how parenting would be. And I definitely brought that same kind of work ethic and characteristic into my home, thinking it was good because that's the example I had. And my wife, she wasn't the type of person to be like, yeah, go ahead and go to work. And no, she was very vocal. She had no problem kind of letting me know, like, no, you need to go ahead and let your boss know you're not going to be there. And for me, I didn't understand. I had no idea how to translate that. Like, what are you talking about? This is my job. Like, if I lose this, I'm failing you guys. And for her, it was very much a different thing. Like, no, if you don't show up, you're failing us. And for me, it was very different, very weird. And so over time, I got used to it, thank God. But at first, it was one of those things that we butted heads. I wanted to go to work and she wanted me to be there. And for me, it was like, it's just an after school program. And for her, it's just a day's labor. You don't need it. Like, it was more important to invest in my time with the kids than it was to invest in my time to get more money. And ultimately for something that honestly, I wasn't going to get that much more for. So I started making that sacrifice. I started, working my schedule around the kids and working my schedule around her needs as well. And because of that, I definitely see a difference in my relationship with my immediate family, with my wife and my kids, than the relationship I had growing up. And it's the relationship I always wanted. And I didn't know that in order to get this kind of relationship, I had to sacrifice time that could otherwise be spent or invested elsewhere. So that's definitely one of those things that now, as an adult, as a father, I have definitely changed my views on that, where now I make a point to be there at every single kind of event that my kids might have, whether it's a kindergarten graduation into first grade, whether it's an open house night at 3 p.m. Who does that? But I definitely make an effort if it's a doctor's appointment for one of my kids. Like, my kids want me there. No offense to their mom, but they're with mom all the time. And if I make the time to be there with them, it means a lot more to them than if I just send my wife to go and take them to the doctor. And it just means a lot more to them being a present dad. And so dealing with the stress, dealing with work has actually gotten easier, because I know that my relationship with my family is way more intact doing it this way than if I decide to do it any other way. And I love my dad. He did the best he knew. I justify him. I really do. Mainly because of the way he grew up. I hope that one day I could bring him on the podcast and he could share some of his stories of how he grew up. But because I see the perspective and the differences in our beliefs and the way we do things, of course, I see that what he did was actually the best he could do. And so we had the best dad. But yeah, look at me. I've been talking here to a camera by myself for 45 minutes or so. So yeah. Anyways, sorry I keep walking out on you guys. It's a Thursday night for me. And, it's one of those nights where it's been tiring. Today has been up and down. We've been home most of the time, I'm not gonna lie. Watched a few movies with the kids, and I keep having to get up because one of my cameras keeps shutting off, so I'm not cutting out any information I otherwise should be giving you guys. I do want to take this time and thank everyone who's been listening, because it is encouraging. It is very encouraging to know that people care about my perspective and about what I have to show in this podcast. I have, not gonna lie, I've been dealing with a lot of self-consciousness. A lot of me just not liking the way I look. I'm overweight. I get a lot of negative, or I tend to get very negative about how I feel about myself. And so it's been an ongoing battle for me to just sit here in this podcast and share everything about me, share everything about my family, putting my kids in a weird situation. And I'm not famous or anything, thank God. But it does impact me on how many people actually listen to this. I have hundreds of listeners in social media, hundreds of listeners on YouTube, thousands of listeners through the podcast platforms like Google Podcasts or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Just tons and tons of listeners. And although it's a podcast and I do a video platform, most of my listeners actually come through the podcast platforms. And I just want to give a shout out to all of those listening to this in India. We have people in Germany. We have people in Africa. People in Canada, Mexico. Obviously the US. Algeria, wherever that is. There's a bunch of places. France. Thank all of you guys, because it's very encouraging to know that, you know, whatever it is I'm putting out there is being listened to. And although not everyone watches the videos, I get it. It's a 2-hour video. Sometimes it's a hour and a half. I do appreciate when people listen. And although you're not watching me, I'm sure you guys have jobs and stuff like that. I appreciate the fact that people have their headphones on during their gym session or on their way to work or whatever it is, wherever it is that they are listening to the podcast. I do want to thank all of you because it's very encouraging. I honestly didn't know where this would go. I didn't know that I'd have thousands of people interested in what I talk about. At the beginning, I had maybe 30 or so people, and it freaked me out because if 30 of you guys were to walk in my house right now to listen, it would scare me. I've always wanted to open a life group and some sort of Bible study, but it's kind of scary to have to be the one to teach everybody. Just because all these eyes are on you, and that's like a group of 5 to maybe 10, 20 people. And for me to really sit here and look at the camera and not see nobody, it's one of those things. It's like an illusion, you know, and the reality is that thousands of you are listening right now, and I'm very, very grateful. And if you guys were all here right now, I'd be pooping myself because it's crazy. One of the other things too that I am self-conscious about is my breathing. I know these mics, they pick up everything, at least in my ears. I don't know about you guys, but I can hear every one of my breaths. And Jesus Christ, man. I feel like a fat man. But again, I know I shouldn't be talking to myself any sort of way, like negatively. But I'm being honest and open with you guys. And some of these things is like, man, I got to make an effort to change some of these things because it sucks to look at myself this way. And it even sucks for me. Like I try to look at the camera more often and try to engage with you guys, but it's very difficult. And, yeah. So what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to cut this part out. I feel like I need to take a moment of silence just with the camera and just sit here and just look at the camera. Because I feel like it's the only way that I can get comfortable with my discomfort. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people don't understand, that you have to do it in order to get over your fears. And so I know I started the podcast talking about how talking to myself or being alone is something I'm very scared of, or one of my biggest fears. I do feel like the more I do it, the more silent I get. It's also like a very loud silence. And I don't know, the psychologists in the room, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, or give me a whole explanation. I'll definitely read it. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just be quiet for a few seconds and just stare at the camera because it's scary. Alrighty. Now, I definitely feel different. Yeah, it's a whole different vibe, this being by myself on the podcast. I don't know if I'd like it, but I also don't know if I dislike it. And it's one of those things that I'm excited to continue to try. So, anyways, it's been a very short podcast for sure. And I already took the time out to thank everybody. Buy some merch. That's one thing that I did want to promote. I got some awesome sweatshirts. I got some awesome t-shirts. I had some issues with shipping and the company I was using, but I've definitely changed my my format. So buy some merch, guys. Show some support. Definitely need some of that moolah to keep this podcast going. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for kind of sitting there and just watching me be vulnerable and scared, and thank you guys. Thank you guys very much for just listening to this podcast. Appreciate you guys. Peace out.